Hey guys, welcome to another Homelab Series video today. In today's video, we'll be continuing our AWX exploration here and actually be creating our first Ansible playbook and making an AWX template out of it and running it against one of our servers. So we'll show you kind of how to get from beginning to end on your playbook and have some fun. So this video is also sponsored by me, myself, and I. So if you enjoy my content and want to sponsor me or send me some free swagger hardware, my email is in the description below. So all right, let's get started, guys. So in our last video, we showed you how you could create your repo in GitLab and import it as a project into your AWX instance. So we'll use the same project. We will actually create a playbook. So playbooks are actually all in YAML. So we'll create, like, in this case, we'll create like a patching playbook. We'll name it patch.yaml. And there's a few things that you'll need to do. Usually starts off with the header with the three hyphens. Then we will just define the host. Now in this case, the host doesn't actually make much sense to define in this playbook, because then at that case you would have to update this playbook if you want to run it on other hosts. So we're going to parameterize the host in here as a variable to make it more universal, so that you can use it whenever on whatever host, whenever you want to use it. So we'll set it as an extra variable here and variabilize it with host name. Essentially in Ansible, if you want to specify things in variables, you would use the double curly brackets and then put the variable name that you want in here. So we'll do that. Next thing we'll do is add become yes. So this become is essentially just like sudoing to whatever, because for the most part, in my opinion, you probably want to always run most of the stuff that you want to run with Ansible as root, because it's more of a server configuration, but you can also run it as other users. But in this case, we'll just become user root. We're going to log in as root anyways, but this is kind of like a default that I like to just use, because if you configure servers, it's easier just to configure things as root. Obviously not a best practice, but in this case, for demo purposes, it makes a lot more sense. And then we get to the tasks. So in here, there's a ton of Ansible modules that you can essentially use. And I mean, you can just really Google search Ansible modules, and there is a ton of modules, a ton of collections that you could use. I mean, it ranges from a wide range of things with even Azure and AWS related things, as well as physical hardware, like we just passed like big IP for like F5s and stuff like that. So like it actually does range to a huge range of modules. But in this case, we're going to be using the yum module. So Ansible yum module, because we're just going to do a simple patch, which we would do like a yum update, right? So in this case, you can see most of the modules in here actually show you what the parameters for the modules are, so you can see specifically what you can do with them. And then if you scroll far enough down, it will also show you examples. And this is what I usually use for the most part, because it makes it a lot easier to just kind of look at and be like, oh, this is what I need to do. So most modules are actually pretty straightforward, and gives you this. It's usually when you have to do more complicated tasks that makes it a lot harder and rough to kind of deal with. So, but we're going to keep it simple, and then we'll probably do more advanced playbooks later. So we'll upgrade all packages. So we're actually going to do essentially this right here. We can include the name too. It's fine. All right, get the name in there and paste that. The tabbing will matter, because this YAML is actually space sensitive. I'm more of a tab guy, but I set my tabs to be spaces essentially. So hopefully it doesn't actually balk about that, because I think they should treat as spaces even though I hit tab. Okay, yeah, I think it should still treat spaces. But essentially what this says is we'll use the built-in yum module for wildcard for all the packages. Make sure that they're updated to the latest. You can specify a very specific package to install them if you wanted to. So for like example, you wanted to install like HTTPD, you would just say, hey, I want HTTPD to be the latest package. So it would install it if it's there, or upgrade it if it was already installed. So what we'll do is commit this and patching. And then we will go to our projects in here and then we will need to sync it again. So the reason why we need to sync this is because essentially this repo updated, but this doesn't know that it updated because it doesn't connect essentially. It just does a one-time sync when you hit sync, right? So you have to manually hit sync. We'll definitely make a video on how to automate that a little bit better. But in this case, we'll sync it. So now we got a new revision. It should match up. And then we will create our first template. But before we do that, we will actually go to credentials. So this is important because essentially AWX, which is using Ansible on the back end, needs to know how to connect to your servers from itself. In this case, we're just going to use our root credential and just let it SSH in as root to be able to do all the things. Also, not a best practice, but it's more for demoing purposes. You create an Ansible service account user and do everything as that. So that makes more sense. But in this case, we're going to just create a root credential. So we'll slap in root, select default organization, and machine is the credential type that you want. Now, the other thing that you can do is you can either do your username and password combo to log in, or you can do like a username and a private key, or if you wanted to do both, you could do both. But in this case, we're just going to stick with username and password. So we'll save that. And also, if you did have a passphrase on your private key, you can also use that too. So like there's a lot of options in here, so you can play around with it, but we're going to keep it simple here. All right, so now we are on to job templates. So now that we have that playbook, we can create a template from that playbook. So we'll call it patching. We'll leave it as a job type run. We'll select the inventory that we created, the Homelab inventory. We'll select the project that we created, GitLab. And we can leave default environment execution environments to be empty, and then the playbook will be patch.yaml. It's the only playbook that was in there, so that's why it auto selected. But if it wasn't, there would be others in here too. The other thing to note here is you can see how it picked it up because it's a YAML file and it didn't pick up like the README or the inventory. So that's another thing to note. If your file naming it doesn't end with a YAML extension, it won't pick up either. So, or if you typed it in wrong, right? I've definitely ran into that case before and you're like, what's wrong? And it's more of a logical error, right? Next, we'll get the credentials. So we'll click select root, so it will select. And then in the extra variables, because we variablized the host name, we will set host name as a variable down here. And then we will prompt on launch. So essentially, whenever you run this variable section will be prompted, and then you can pretty much type in what you want. So let's go to inventories real quick so we can see what we have in our inventory, and we'll select a host in there. So we'll probably just do our Nextcloud instance here because I've done a lot of just random stuff on our Nextcloud instance, so we can just do that. I think that one's actually already up to date, so it should go pretty quick. So you can go back to templates. You can see we create our patching template. We can click launch template on the side, and you'll see that it actually pops up because we checked the launch on prompt in here where it says prompt on launch. And that's what you want. You can also do this in a survey version, in a survey version, and we will show you that probably in a different video on how to do that. But to keep it simple, we'll just do this, and then we'll type in Nextcloud for our instance. So it will try to SSH to our Nextcloud with our root and password, and then run the playbook. So we'll hit launch. So in here, we might actually log into our Nextcloud. Drag it out local. So now you can see it gathered the facts for it, and if you were to actually look at processes, it actually runs. Essentially, what happens is it'll create like an Ansible like Python thing on the back end, and we'll run it afterwards, and then just make sure everything's all good. So right now, the gathering facts by default, gathering facts will always happen because it essentially just logs in and gathers facts from your machine. This is actually very useful because you can make conditionals around what is in this, right? So like, for example, say you wanted, let's try to find a good thing. Python interfaces. Oh, okay. So like, say for example, you wanted to only run things on like an Ansible distribution major version 8, right? So like say for example you're upgrading from like 7 to 8, you could set this variable Ansible distribution major version to 8 and only have it run when it's 8 and not any other time, right? So you can definitely do conditionals, and this is very helpful to look at these very Ansible facts to use them because they'll run every single time. So now we can see that it has finished. So usually this would either be like okay or change. So okay means it didn't need to update anything. So most of your playbooks should be idempotent, right? If you run it once and then you run it again, it should come up with the same result, right? So you don't want to make playbooks that essentially would always change and then consistently like concatenate a file, right? It doesn't make any sense. You want everything to be idempotent so you can run it as many times as you want, and at the end you should get the machine that you want done. So in this case, it's okay because I've already updated the packages so that there were no actually packages to be updated. But if there were, you can click on it. You can see in the JSON, there'll be like a standard out that will show you what actually needs to be updated. So see, it says nothing to do because there's no packages that needs to be updated. So that is essentially how you run your first template. The other thing that I'll show you here is that you can actually also do scheduling. So like, say for example, you want to patch every week, right? So you could, not survey, schedules. You can add a schedule where you can say patch every week and set a time. So like, we can say today at like, 3 p.m. And then run weekly. And then run every week on Friday and never. And it would essentially, and then select prompt, enter the host name for the host you want to patch. And then it would just run this Ansible playbook on a schedule weekly for you so that you essentially don't have to worry about manually patching anymore. So that kind of helps you automate your system to make it a little bit easier to manage, especially when you have a lot of servers, right? So there you go, guys. That is how you set up, create a new playbook, create a template from that playbook, and possibly if you want to schedule with it. So if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, and we will see you guys in the next video. Bye.